Hello and welcome back. We are almost halfway through Series 2 now, which I cannot believe. It is absolutely flying by, isn't it, Geoff?
It is absolutely zipping past, as years tend to do, but we've had an amazing range of guests so far.
Yeah, and we've got another brilliant guest joining us today, the wonderful Rupinder Kaur. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Rupinder?
I shall. Rupinder Kaur is the founder of Asian Women Mean Business, a platform dedicated to empowering South Asian women to overcome self-doubt, imposter syndrome and fear, enabling them to step into leadership and take control of their careers. A graduate of Aston University with an MSc in Human Resource Management, Rupinder has helped thousands of women break barriers through coaching, mentorship and leadership development programs. She led the first all-South Asian female group to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, which featured in the documentary Mother Kili. Her Inspire Club and upcoming learning and development app provide tailored support for South Asian women seeking personal and professional growth. Through her work, Rupinder is reshaping the leadership landscape for South Asian women, fostering confidence, ambition, and success. And Rupinder, it is a treat to have you with us. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Geoff. Hi, Aimee. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Amazing. Shall we start with some of the basics and then we'll build up from there? So tell us a little bit about Asian Women Mean Business and what inspired you to embark upon that journey.
Yeah, so Asian Women Mean Business was really born out of my own experiences of navigating the corporate world as a South Asian woman and realizing that so many of us are struggling with imposter syndrome, lack of confidence and visibility. So after my master's at Aston University, I embarked on a HR career in corporates throughout the UK, primarily based in London. And one of the things that I realized was that hard work alone wasn't going to cut it. I wasn't going to get promoted or have my work recognized just by working hard. I had to increase visibility. I had to advocate for myself. I had to overcome so many of my own barriers that were put in place around confidence and visibility. And it was this moment really when I realized that my culture and so much of the cultural conditioning that I grew up with in the South Asian community, which rewards hard work, staying humble, keeping your head down, that was contrary to what needed to happen in order to excel in my corporate career. So when I had that moment of realization, and then my career just exploded. I was 27 years old when I got promoted to a regional head of HR. I looked around me and I just didn't see the women that I went to university with, that were my peers, in the same sort of roles. And really, that was a turning point, because I really do believe once you've made it, we have a sense of responsibility and obligation to bring others along with us. And so in addition to my HR career, I started to coach and mentor others completely pro bono, just because I wanted them to have the same impact in their careers that I knew that they were capable of doing and being. And so that led to Asian Women Mean Business, which effectively was my side hustle for a long time, because I love HR. I still consider myself to be in HR because what I'm doing now is all about learning and development. But it got to the point where I had a young family, I had a busy HR career, and I had this side hustle and something had to give. And I really wanted to do something that had impact and would have a legacy and that would help other women with their careers. So I parked my HR career 5 years ago and went all in with Asian Women Mean Business. And it's been the most incredible journey and experience of my lifetime.
Is it correct that South Asian women will typically excel academically, but then struggle to break into the leadership roles? Is that the right kind of way round? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yes. So the Office of National Statistics here in the UK, every so often they publish the stats around academia. So we can see the breakdown of gender and ethnicity and what groups are doing particularly well and where some groups are particularly struggling. And it's always baffled me that South Asian girls and young women always do well academically. So we are the second highest academic group. The only group that outperforms South Asian girls and young women are Chinese boys and girls. So we are doing very well academically, but we don't see that trend in leadership roles. So if that trajectory was to continue, you would see and you would expect to see more South Asian women in the corporate world, leadership roles in the C-suite. And we just don't see that. So what we're seeing is this gap between academia and what's happening in terms of careers. And I believe, and having done some research and having now been in this sector for 20 years and coached and mentored thousands of women, I think it's because our background as South Asian girls and women in the South Asian community really enables us to excel in academia. And if you think about the education sector and industry, particularly here in the UK, if you think about hard work, following the rules, keeping your head down, not necessarily drawing attention to yourself, that's rewarded, and we do very well within that. But the minute you leave that and you get into the corporate world and you're expected to self-advocate, you're expected to be more visible, you're expected to talk about your achievements and your successes and highlight them because no one else is going to do that for you, it's very difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because no one tells us that's what it takes. And it takes a moment just to kind of reprogram yourself and understand that what has got me this far isn't going to get me further in my career. So that's why I think there's this pattern that's emerging, and this idea that we can't brag and that we need to be humble, and this real reverence sometimes to hierarchy as well, can all count against us when we're trying to grow our careers. So this conditioning does hold us back. And the part of the work that I've been doing is really raising awareness of that, because until we know that's what's holding us back, we can't do anything about it.
Thank you. And it feels like there's a movement at the moment for South Asian women who are finding their voice. Obviously, your organisation is doing amazing things. My background is in public relations, PR. And in that space, we now have the Asian Communicators Network. We have the first South Asian woman president of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations in more than 75 years of its history. So it does feel like now is a time for South Asian women to step up and to have that voice. What do you think has changed that's enabled South Asian women to find their confidence?
I think, they're all really good points. And it definitely feels like there is a tide that's turning, and so much of that will be awareness and a realization. I feel like social media has played a big part in this as well. And I know social media gets a lot of pushback, and there is so much that it is concerning about it. But what it has enabled is, if we consider that typical forms of mainstream media haven't always covered the successes of not only South Asian women, but women of colour. But what we now have access to is podcasts, to social media, to platforms that have enabled us to see representation and enabled us to see what other women are doing. That goes a long way, I think, to overcome imposter syndrome, to overcome those self-inflicted barriers that we place on ourselves around what we think is possible. It also plays a part in changing some of that conditioning I was talking about, because cultural conditioning is made up of all of these beliefs and values and all of the things that have been done because it's always been done that way. But when you see a wave of women doing things contrary to that or doing something different, that's generating a different dialogue, and it's generating an awareness, and that's inspiring others to go and do the thing that they want to do as well. So it's incredible to see that happening.
And you've been, as you say, mentoring thousands of women over the last 20 years. What do you think are the most effective ways to build confidence, to push past self-doubt?
Yes, so I've been doing this a long time now, although my mind, I'm still sort of 22 years old and I've just graduated. It's funny how that happens, isn't it, with time? And then you look back and you're like, oh, no, it's been 2 decades. So some of the things that I think are really important when it comes to building up your confidence is taking small but consistent steps. Sometimes we think confidence has to be something that's a giant leap. And often it's our mind that keeps us trapped because we don't feel capable of making that leap. But if we just break it down and break it into smaller bite-sized chunks and then make a commitment to taking those steps, that can be really helpful. Some of the other things that have really helped me and helped others that in my community have been around accountability and responsibility. So making a public declaration that this is what I'm going to be doing, and then knowing that you have support that can help you with that. I think community support and culturally relevant support is really important. So having support from your peers that are going through the same things, that have had the same concerns, that maybe are a few steps ahead of you, that can serve as an inspiration and as a support for your journey is really important as well. But also, I think the conversations that I've been having is speak up before you're ready, take action before you're ready. There's the paradox of confidence is we wait until we feel ready to do the thing when you have to do the thing in order to feel ready. So my mantra always is you're never going to feel ready, because feeling ready comes from doing the thing. So whatever it is, do it and the confidence will follow.
And do you think there's an additional dynamic at play in terms of gender as well as ethnic background, as well as cultural difference, etc.? Do all of those intersect to create a more challenging environment for South Asian women who are trying to get into those leadership roles?
Oh, I love this question. And I think absolutely. And it's really important to recognize that intersection as well of gender, of race, of cultural conditioning, of the roles of women in different communities and culture. And one of the things about the South Asian community is that it is a community and a culture that is deeply rooted in the collective. So the we is more important than the I. And that means that decisions that are made about individuals are rooted in, well, what is in the best interests of the family? What is in the best interest of the community? And when we talk about family and community, we're not talking about just the people who are living under this roof. We're talking about all of the layers of that. We also know that the South Asian culture is patriarchal. So there is this real reverence to men in our community and to their expectations and their needs. That is changing. I'm delighted that's changing. And as a feminist, that brings me so much joy. But I think it's really important to recognize our roots and recognize where we've come from. And the thing about cultural conditioning is that these are things that have been in play for millennia. I've been doing this work for 2 decades. That's not enough when we think about the centuries that which all of this has been embedded and enmeshed. So it does take time, it does take effort, and it does take energy. And you've got to be up for it's almost a fight that you have to have fire in your belly for. But all of that does make an impact. But I have a daughter, and my daughter is 13, and what I see in her and the next generation blows my brain. The things that they are choosing to accept and not accept, the things that they are challenging, where they're speaking up. And our role really as women, as mums, as aunts, and the men in our community as well, is to really encourage that, because they're the ones that are going to be blazing such a powerful trail in terms of what's to come.
You've got the Inspire Club, which is a community group. We've used the word community a lot throughout this conversation so far. Do you think, you've mentioned, accepting and acknowledging that there are issues of tradition, heritage. Do you think it's really important to address through community groups rather than just attempting to deny that those stereotypes or those traditions or those patterns are in place? Do you think it's actually important not just to acknowledge it, but to also embrace that and try and use that to change it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it goes back to the conversation we were just having about intersectionality. And what works for me as a South Asian woman here in the UK isn't necessarily going to be working for my white peers or my black peers. We thrive in community. We from the dawn of age, from when we were on this planet with dinosaurs, we've lived in tribes and community, and we've needed that to be safe and to share resources. And I think it's exactly the same thing now. So many women feel isolated and alone in their career challenges, in the stagnation of their career. I think to have a safe space where you can voice those concerns, know that they aren't going to be minimized, but they are going to be acknowledged and recognized, knowing that your successes and wins are going to be celebrated because it has taken you more effort, more energy, more hard work to overcome, is such an incredible thing. And what we're seeing within Inspire Club is that how women have explained it and described it to me is Rupinder, it feels like the place that we can be our full selves and share all of ourselves, the things that are working for us, the things that aren't working for us. And the idea behind Inspire Club has always been that it's an incubator. I want to give women the skills, the resources, the network, the confidence, almost like a practical toolkit of what they need to excel in their professional lives, so that when they are going out into their professional lives, they have all of this support available to them. And the testimonials and the stories and the impact that we're having continue to blow me away and show me how important and necessary it is.
Do those stories and successes fuel you? Because obviously you start off on a particular journey, and you said you've got fire in your belly, you're passionate, but obviously there are always challenges along the way. Is it kind of like a self-fueling thing of the more success you see and the more people you help, the more you want to go on and do more?
Absolutely. I loved my HR career, and as much as I found that rewarding and working with senior leaders and working on all of that, what I'm doing now has a deep impact. And what we're seeing is that when women are stepping into their purpose, they're stepping into their strength, they're taking ownership of their professional lives, whatever that looks like for them, the ripple effect of that is it has an impact on their children, on their families, on their relationships. And that is, it's priceless. It really is. And so when there are days, when you're working for yourself and when you're in entrepreneurship and when you've done what I've done, which is, you've set up an organization from scratch and you're doing it day in, day out, there are moments when you're thinking, am I still having the impact that I thought I was having? And honestly, I kid you not, those are the days where completely unexpectedly a message will come into my inbox of the impact that we're having, or I'll have a chance conversation, or someone will send me a voice note and say, that masterclass was brilliant, or what you said here made an impact, or I've just negotiated a pay rise, or I've just walked into my dream job. I didn't think I could do it. Those are the moments that are pure gold for me. And those are the moments that keep me going.
I imagine there must be a balance to strike between the stories of the women that you're mentoring, coaching and supporting, and the obstacles or challenges or perhaps even trauma that they've faced in their childhood and in their early career, and then enabling them and inspiring them to step into that power and purpose and take control of their career and take control of their life and the positive impact that has. How do you manage that balance between supporting the person who has been through perhaps negative experiences and enabling the person who is stepping into a future that is much brighter for them?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And for me, it's always been about clarity around my role as a coach and a mentor and a founder, and what it is that we do at Asian Women Mean Business, which is all about learning and development and giving a toolkit that enables them to thrive in their personal and professional lives, and also signposting to other professionals that can help unpack some of that trauma and validate some of those experiences as well. So we have access to a whole range of professionals, be that therapists or individuals from different healing modalities, that they can have access to, that they can take on board that professional support and advice, so that they are in a place where they've dealt with what's happened previously, but they feel fully equipped to move on and to look to the future with positivity and optimism.
Thank you for that. And I think that's a really important thing to think about then, is that toolkit, that support. And you're currently working on a learning and development app, aren't you? So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I am. I'm so excited. This is my third baby. I've got two human ones, and I've got a third one in this app. So 5 years ago, I set up Inspire Club, which is a membership. It's a community for South Asian women to grow and develop personally and professionally. The success of that community has come as a surprise to me. You know, when you get a sense that this is needed, but actually you don't know until you do it and you put it out there and see the response that you get and see the impact that you get. And it's been incredible. So a year ago, we decided to start building this app that's going to be a learning and development app that has all of our learning courses on there, that has our masterclasses, our sessions, has the community on there. And my goal is for this app to be on the phones of South Asian women worldwide, globally, so that they can access culturally relevant, supportive advice that will enable them to help and grow with their personal and professional lives. I'm not tech. My background is in HR. So to navigate this and to be in this space has been a challenge. And we've talked about challenges earlier. But we know that technology and using technology in a way that it enables the ease and the growth of others is such a powerful thing to do. So my hope is to get this out there by the end of the year. At the moment, it's only available to our members, and it's going through a round of beta testing, and we're making sure that it's fully functional. But certainly my goal is I want it to be on App Store and Google Store, and I want everyone to be able to download it and to have access to this information.
A question about the future, but it's quite a broad question, I suppose. I work on the fundraising side of the alumni team, and I think when you're in any role which has a mission addressing questions of balance or imbalance, the question I think always comes back to, do you think there will be a time when what you're doing is not needed?
That's such a great question. And I think there's two parts to answer that. Do I hope that there's a time that what I'm doing won't be needed? Yes. So my hope is that when I look at the next generation, that there is equity, that there is an understanding, there's empathy, and that there is a level playing field regardless of gender or ethnicity or socioeconomic background, because we know that's a barrier as well. So that's my hope. Do I think we're there? No. Do I think we're going to get there in the foreseeable future? I actually don't. There's been some really interesting research that came out to show that in order for women to get full gender equity and parity, it's going to take 5 generations. So this is research that the International Women's Day have commissioned, and it's been quoted quite a lot. That scares me, and that makes me think about the action that's needed, but we're not there. And what the research is showing us that we won't be there for 5 generations. And what we also know is that women of colour have additional barriers and additional obstacles as well. So this isn't going to be fixed in the foreseeable future. And my hope is that until it is being fixed, and there is so much that we can do in terms of advocacy and challenging some of those structures that are posing limitations to women of colour, is that we have to take personal accountability and responsibility as well. And I think we have to come together as a community, and that's a community of like-minded people, whether that's allies, whether that's sponsors, whether that's peer-to-peer support, that can enable us as women to go further than alone.
And you've talked about community and allyship there. And I'm curious, what more could, should, might allies and organisations do to support South Asian women in particular into those leadership roles? What difference can allyship make in that space?
So allyship and sponsorship is the key. And when I look back at particularly when I look back at my HR career, there were some very pivotal moments where there was, in particular, a white senior male leader who was my sponsor, who was my advocate. And so he spoke up for me in the rooms that I wasn't in. He took the time to understand some of the challenges and some of the cultural conditioning. And he was actually the one that made me realize how much of it was holding me back. And so he came at it from a lens of empathy and compassion and understanding, wanting to support me, but also being in those rooms to make sure that people understood what women of colour, what South Asian women, some of our challenges and what we were going through. So that is so important. I think also it's really important to address some of the biases that are coming up in organisations. And I would be naive to think that doesn't still happen. So biases, discrimination. And so collectively we can play a part in that, challenging that when we see it, whether that's policies, whether that's structures, whether that's individuals or incidents as well, but also just a recognition and an awareness. And that's the work that I've really been doing with corporates and leaders, is a recognition of different leadership styles and not assuming that confidence has to be loud, has to be extroversion and this bigger personality, because many South Asian women lead with a quiet strength. They lead with determination and focus. And that's not always recognized or appreciated And so drawing attention to that has been incredible for some of the organisations that I've been working with as well.
And there's a really interesting kind of dynamic there around, I'm going to bring the academic side into it, but around the literature of leadership and management, and how so much of the theories that modern leadership training is based on come from research that was done in white, Western, male dominated business environments. And so we still teach, not here at Aston, but in the wider world, leadership is still taught in a way that is so heavily influenced by a particular culture of its time. And yet, actually, as you've just articulated, leadership styles are very different, diverse. We've got soft leadership, we've got transformational leadership, we've got servant leadership, coaching leadership, all of these different ways to lead, empower, and inspire people that don't just rely on, I'm going to tell you what to do and I'm in that position of hierarchy. So there's a lot of change happening, I think, out in the business world. But as you've said, it's maybe not happening quick enough. But I wonder, how do you translate some of that academic theory, training, and so on into the work that you're doing? And how do you bring your HR background into the work that you're doing?
I love that point. And I think it's not just about the teaching of those models. It's also what we're seeing is that those leaders are the ones that are rewarded for that behavior, because they are the ones that are in that position of power. They are the ones that are seen to be as role models. And that's what generates this feeling of imposter syndrome for so many South Asian women, because if you're not like that, you can't be like that. And that's what you're seeing as the norm, as being held as the standard of leadership. You are going to feel like you don't belong. You are going to question your abilities, your knowledge, your talent. And so one of the things that I've been doing is really raising awareness and having this very real dialogue about who said that was the correct model of leadership? How has that served us? What are we seeing in the environment at the moment where that hasn't been of service, and the real impact of that? And what happens when you do reward others with a different style of leadership as well? So it is this conversation and dialogue, and you've got to have the appetite for it. And you've got to have the openness for it as well, and the expansion of sitting in dialogue around that too. And it's really difficult because people don't necessarily want to have their opinions challenged. And also what it does require is those leaders who are in power do need to look at themselves as well. And so it takes a really strong leader and a real strong sense of, I want to do the right thing here. I want to make sure that our values are correct. I want to make sure that the behaviors that we are seeing are correct. I want to make sure that our talent is being seen. And one of the things that I always talk about is that there is a very real, invisible talent and strength in South Asian women that is often overlooked, because we are not going to be demonstrating those same quirks of leadership that you see in others. And that's not to say that we should be overlooked. So it is a dialogue, it's an awareness, it's knocking on a lot of doors, it's sometimes being bold and striking up those conversations that people don't want to have. But even that, I find, is really important, because when we're talking about it, when we're allowing a period of self-reflection, it's really important to bring to the surface about some of the things that we've talked about here today.
Rupinder, it's been absolutely fascinating going into depth on this subject and hearing how passionate you are about this. We also have a couple of quick fire questions which we throw at everybody on the podcast. However, before I do that, I've got a shameless plug that I'm very quickly going to make, and then I'm going to be even more shameless and bring you into the shameless plug as well. We just wanted to let all of our listeners know there are a couple of exciting new features on the Aston for Life platform, which is our online space for Aston alumni. And we've recently introduced a jobs board as well as direct messaging, so you can post jobs, find jobs, and chat to your heart's content. And here's the really shameless bit. You're actually on the platform, aren't you, Rupinder? You've written some content, posted some material on there about overcoming the fear of failure. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I have, Geoff. Yes, I'm on the platform. I love that platform, and I've wrote some content on there. It's been so joyful to connect with peers that from my time when I was there, but also new people as well, and networking with them. I think it's a really great platform, and I congratulate you all on it.
Thank you. So those quick fire questions that I promised. If you could have anyone in the world, anyone throughout history, alive or dead, on your team, by your side, working with you on this, who would it be?
Well, given that I'm building a learning and development app, I would love to have Steve Jobs with me. Like, he would be, that's it, right? Done. Game changer.
Fantastic. And I'm going to take you back to Aston. What is your favourite Aston memory?
So I loved my time at Aston. I chose to do my master's degree part-time over 2 years while I was working in human resources. And actually, a true story, I wanted to move away. I lived locally, at the time I lived locally to the Midlands, and I really wanted to move to London to do my master's. But when I did my research, without a shadow of a doubt, the HR degree master's program at Aston was above and beyond anything and anywhere else. So it was an absolute joy to be there, from everything, from the lectures, the peers that I've met, who I'm still in touch with now, the networking, the support. And I think the support that you continue to give once you leave. You actually never leave the Aston family, which I think is really incredible. I was there a few years ago for a conference, and the joy of being back on campus and walking through it was such a nostalgic time for me that I look back with real happiness. I would also say that the master's degree that I did really set me up for success in terms of the knowledge it gave me, the credibility it gave me. It opened so many doors for me and continues to do even 20 years later. So it was such an incredible investment. And I think that's really important when at a time when people are questioning whether university is worth it. I'm a big advocate of education. I'm a big advocate of professional training. And I think Aston is incredible.
We're going to have to get you back on every month.
With pleasure.
Thank you so much for that, Rupinder. Before we let you leave, I wanted to just ask one more question, because Geoff mentioned in the intro that you'd climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and that you'd led the first South Asian women's team up there. And I just wanted a little bit on your experience. What was it like?
It was the most transformative experience of my life. Our group of women were mums, grandmothers, daughters. None of us are professional athletes. I often joke and say we were all built for comfort and not speed. But the idea behind it was that we really wanted to challenge some of the stereotypes that exist around what South Asian women can and can't do, and break some of the barriers that we place on ourselves. So our small and mighty team of 14 incredible women went off to Tanzania. We climbed the mountain, we summited, and then to have this documentary and this film. So we had a filmmaker join us, and we released the film to screenings last year. It's going to be on Amazon Prime later this year. And my hope is that film will serve as inspiration to others, that they can do it as well.
Do you think that is in many ways an embodiment of that idea you mentioned very early on in the chat about confidence and doing something and not necessarily waiting until you're completely sure you can do it before doing it?
Yes, it is. But there's a bit of a story behind it. And the story was, I wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro 20 years ago. Actually, when I graduated from my master's, I wanted to do it then. But 20 years ago, it wasn't the kind of thing that you saw South Asian women doing. And so I did the thing. I graduated, I got a job, met my husband, got married, got a mortgage, had kids, and then life just takes over. And a couple of years ago, as I was approaching my 40th birthday, I came back to it. And I thought, oh my God, I never did that thing I really wanted to do. Why didn't I do it? And I initially looked around and I thought, maybe there'll be others that will want to do it with me. But the thing that I did do was I did it. I booked it, said I was going to do it. And what really surprised me was that women in my community came forward and said, we would like to do it too. And so what started as what was going to be a solo trip, and this realization 20 years later that life had got in the way of a dream that I held, was then opened up to allow others to do it as well. And then to see the impact of that. And can I tell you, my daughter is often asked, people say to her, oh, your mum's climbed Kilimanjaro. Is that something you want to do? And my daughter always says, no. Because if my mum can climb Kilimanjaro, Everest is my goal. And that just summarizes everything that I'm trying to do with Asian Women Mean Business, about this knock-on impact, about breaking barriers, about representation, about encouraging the next generation to dream bigger, do more. I think that just summarizes everything that I'm trying to do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rupinder, for joining us on the After Aston I podcast today. I've learned a huge amount, and your passion and enthusiasm is phenomenal. It's been a pleasure. We're going to leave the links to Rupinder's LinkedIn page in the show notes, as well as details for Asian Women Mean Business. That's it for now, and we will be back next month.